Now, officially, we can open this conference, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite the Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga. As we all know, he is the presidential candidate back in Kenya, and they're having elections in August of this year. And I'm grateful that despite all the scheduling and pressure back home, he gave this opportunity to come here and share with you the importance of this conference. Honorable Prime Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much, President. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or they say shalom.
Shalom.
I'm very delighted to have an opportunity to meet such a distinguished audience here today in Jerusalem. We had a wonderful dinner last night. We want to thank our host for making us so fed up. The language of Idi Amin Dada. We have some people who were with us here last year, and I see also new faces who have joined here. When I accepted the invitation to come, I knew it was going to be close to our elections. I didn't know how close it was going to be. You need to know that this week, or last week, I was formally confirmed as the candidate for my coalition, which is the National Super Alliance, which is called NASA. So I was now debating whether I should coming, but I said, since I had really made a commitment to come, I will come even if it was only for a short period of time. This meeting, again, is privileged to be taking place at a time when just a few hours ago, about 30 hours ago, the women in Nigeria, girls who were abducted by the Boko Haram, have been released. I think we need to basically recognize that very momentous action and say it is a major victory for peace and justice. So we are grateful that this is taking place at this time. I'm hoping that our bishops are going to have an opportunity to pray. But I can say, praise the Lord.
Amen.
I was privileged, as I said, to speak here in March last year on the subject of governance and its impact on democratization and development in Africa. Since then, a number of political developments have taken place on the continent of Africa. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, pushed its elections from November 2016 to April 2018, despite protests from the opposition. Zambia held a tightly contested election in which the incumbent, President Edgar Lungu, was declared the winner by a small margin over the main opponent, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. We need to note that since then, Mr. Hichilema is right now in custody, charged with treason, basically because he supposedly blocked a presidential motor bid. Ghana, too, held elections that continued its tradition of peaceful transfer of power through free, fair, and credible polls. After years of quagmire, Somalia held elections that ended with Parliament electing Mr. Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo as president, and the Gambia finally got rid of Yahya Jammeh through the ballot after 22 years of his rule. As we gather here, more landmark elections are coming up in Africa this year. Kenya, Rwanda, and Angola all go to the polls in August, while Liberia will hold its elections in October. Religious leaders are expected to play significant roles in all these elections and the development that will follow. That's why the subject of our meeting here today is important: democratization and religion. What role they choose to play, the positions they choose to take, will have significant implications for peace and democratization in Africa. The search for peace and stability and good governance has never been and can never be limited to the activities and decisions of politicians. In the history of human race, so many wars have been and continue to be fought in the name of religion. No place can this be better understood than here, right here in Jerusalem. The issue of Jerusalem cannot be resolved without acknowledging its religious significance to all the three Abrahamic faiths. That is, the Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Likewise, the problem of fundamentalism and terrorism based on a perversion of the Islamic faith cannot be understood or addressed without understanding its religious dimension. In many places, peace and democracy are in peril because of the persecution of religious minorities. Where freedom of worship is restricted, peace and stability are in peril because of oppression of people of faith. In Africa in particular, religions of all sorts have always been and continue to be part and parcel of human life. Religion has significant impact on how the African society is structured and how leadership is perceived. What this means is that religion remains a powerful force for all around us. For democracy, peace, and stability to thrive, religious, secular, and political leaders must invest in each other and talk to each other. Our democracy must be friendly to religion, and our religion must be friendly to democracy. But we need to protect the rights of the people of faith to speak on issues concerning their beliefs. The people of faith must also accept that their quest cannot override the basic tenets of democracy that requires society to function fairly and justly for all. We must invest in gender communication and cooperation among people of different faiths and religious traditions. One of the wonderful features of faith groups is that they often begin by coming together around a common faith. Catholics come together based on the teachings of their faith, just like Muslims and Protestants do. But they end up working to help people of all faiths or of no faith at all. These characteristics of faith groups, added to the fact that they often have a strong presence at the grassroots, make them well placed to support development programs and ideals like democratization, justice, peace and reconciliation. Our rabbis, pastors, priests, sheikhs or imams are often closer to the people than any other organization. They can be reliable agents of change from the grassroots. In fact, in some parts of Africa, where the government capacity is limited and severely challenged, it is the religious groups that have stepped in to provide basics like education, food, shelter, and healthcare. But religious groups must go beyond reactionary approach to problems facing our nations and tackle the root causes. Africa will not fully address its challenges with regard to democratization, economic growth, equitable and inclusive development, and combating nepotism and tribalism until we tackle the problem of leadership and the political corruption stifling the continent. Poor leadership and the political corruption that waters it are at the center of Africa's endless wars, rising poverty, and falling standards of living. The use of state power by government officials for a legitimate private gain and for patronage, the reason the citizens often become victims of the state. It is the reason some communities fall behind while others rise. The reason governments cannot deliver services to citizens as taxes get pocketed by leaders or get hidden in foreign accounts. It is the reason many nations are deeply in debt without anything to show for it. When we talked about the debt burden, many Africans have become hippies, highly indebted economies, without much to show for it. That is because of that era of the Cold War, when the West did not care about how you are running the economy, so long as you say that you are an ally in the war against communism. Those are what we call the wasted years in African development. Political corruption in Africa has ensured that crimes like bribery, extortion, cronyism, nepotism, influence peddling, graft, and embezzlement get the cover of law or are swept under the carpet of the nation surface. Political corruption facilitated criminal enterprise such as drug trafficking, money laundering, and human trafficking, which in turn undermine the capacity of the state to serve the people and maintain law and order. Political corruption in Africa also take the form of misuse of government power for purposes like repression of political opponents and the use of the state resources and security apparatus to clamp down on rights and freedoms like assembly, free speech, and association. Clamp down on opposition and civil society organizations is killing Africa's march towards democratization and good governance. Overall, corruption is stealing the future of millions of Africans. Africa loses about $148 billion in corruption annually. This is equivalent to 25% of the continent's gross domestic product. Corruption is responsible for the increase in the cost of goods in Africa by 20%. Corrupt public officials alone receive between $20 billion and $40 billion in bribery annually. This is equivalent to 20 to 40% of the official development assistance. Africa also loses $60 billion to a year because of illegal capital flow. These thefts, in the end, influences transitions or lack of transitions. It influences how elections are conducted and how people are sent to or in power. Kleptocracies, which means ruled by thieves, don't surrender power sometimes because of the fear of what the future holds without power. It is this corruption that has made most of Africa simply fail to better manage the quality of elections. Because to them it becomes a matter of life and death. They have to cling to power for them to be safe. That even if it means killing the opponent, means rigging it blatantly, they have to do it. So some elections are held in Africa which are merely a farce. And election observers come too late. By the time they arrive, a lot of rigging has already taken place. On the polling day, the amount of public relations exercise, where everything appeared to be very well conducted, but then the voters would have been already disenfranchised before that time. Campaign would have been restricted, and then because of what happens on election day, the observers will come up with a verdict. Oh, there were little flaws here, some little violence here and there, but by and large, the elections reflected the will of the people of country X. In other words, observers are used, international observers are used to sanitize election rigging. It is this corruption that makes upcoming elections to be met with doubt, uncertainty, and trepidation. The result of these elections are often marred by controversy and violence of some scale. You are asked at times by civil society groups, religious groups, to swear that you are going to conduct yourself peacefully, that the elections are going to be peaceful. Conferences are supposed to be held where all participants, all stakeholders in the election process are supposed to sign that they are going to uphold peace during the election process. But we have told them, we don't have a problem signing. But first let's agree that there is going to be justice, that the elections are going to be free, fair, and transparent. Because it was just the rigging that actually triggers violence in the election process. In the elections of 2007 in Kenya, we lost 1,300 people lives. Why? Because the elections was rigged. And when they announced the false results, the country exploded. The entire country exploded, and demonstrations were held. Then the government gave an order to shoot to kill. And many people were shot and killed. Of the 1,300 people who officially recorded as having died, 700 of them died through police bullets because of the order by the government. Political corruption has ensured that our elections get more chaotic and more prone to manipulation. They are more likely to produce bitterly contested results that create divisions rather than unite the nation. Except in the very few countries like Ghana, elections are failing to peacefully aggregate the people's preferences in the choice of political leadership. Incumbents are using them to conform themselves to power or tear apart their nations. No people are better placed to challenge this state of affairs than religious leaders and faith-based organizations. Faith-based organizations cannot stand aside and continue preaching the gospel while ignoring the things keeping the flock steeped in poverty, occasioned by poor and unaccountable leadership. Africa is crying for moral voices that speak truth to power. Africa has history of religious leaders who have saved their nations simply by speaking the truth to power. Speaking the truth to power. In Uganda, Bishop Festo Kibangere and Archbishop Janani Luwum stood up against Idi Amin's dictatorship, arbitrary killings, and disappearances. Luwum eventually paid the ultimate price. In Malawi, 8 Catholic bishops faced the death penalty after producing the pastoral letter that offered a rare, frank critique of the dictator Hetsin Kamuzu Banda. But the letter had sparked a political revolution that eventually shot Banda out of power. In South Africa, Reverend Desmond Tutu stood up firmly against apartheid. Reverend Tutu talked openly and frankly against apartheid, that it was inhuman, it was immoral, it was unchristian. Bishops Henry Okulu, Alexander Muge, and David Bitari championed the change process in Kenya. In the US, Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968 declared that, and I quote, "A time comes when silence is betrayal." When King was talking about Vietnam, modern-day religious leaders must take the toll of corruption, chaotic elections, and the resulting bad governance as our Vietnam moment in Africa. Religious leaders must speak boldly and loudly on corruption, the need for free, fair, transparent, and credible elections, fair distribution of wealth, and the falling standards of living. As Martin Luther King said, religious leaders must move beyond the prophesizing or smooth patriotism to the high grounds of a firm dissent based upon the mandates of conscience and the reading of history. Religious leaders must champion what Dr. King called a new way beyond the darkness that seems so close around us. I repeat, a new way beyond the darkness that seems so close around us. And he also went on to say that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. As political leaders, we must face, we must give space for religious leaders to contribute to the well-being of our nations. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.